Hi guys, it's Teese. I want to give credit where credit is due. Last week during the Skyrim romance mod, an episode where we talk about plagiarism and stealing art unjustly, I briefly mentioned Mickey's Dick Smasher, the lore-friendly Khajiit, which is the playable character by Foul Serpent on YouTube and Tumblr. That's FoulSerpent. And I just wanted to give them credit because I realized just in passing, I was like, oh, Mickey's Dick Smasher, but I didn't give any reference to who I was talking about. And I think that's unfair because this whole episode was exactly about that. It was something done in passing, and I totally did not mean it at all in any way vindictively or stuff like that. So I just wanted to give credit where credit was due. So without further ado, time for the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Author's Note, Don't Like, Don't Listen. It's me, Teese, and Cass is currently a little under the weather in super hell right now. So today I have invited a guest with me, and you may know this person because they have edited one of our episodes in the past and is my co-host on my other podcast, Fresh Podcast Market. So welcome, Panda. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Let me tell you, Teese. Oh,
Yeah.
it is what a thrill. I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. I'm so excited to be here because ever since literally before this podcast actually existed, I have been screaming, "Let me in." And now I'm finally here.
I'm so glad. I'm really happy when Cass was like, I don't know if I could do this episode. I was like, I know the person to call. So, as a reminder, guys, next week, Monday the 1st, we will not be releasing an episode because we're taking a little vacation for Thanksgiving. So, you're going to hear Panda's voice this week, and perhaps maybe even the next episode, we might have a second guest. So, if anybody is feeling like they want to talk about anything hot, shoot us a DM either via Twitter or Instagram, which is Fresh Podcast. Whoa, it is not Fresh Podcast Market.
Wrong pod.
Wrong pod. You could send us a DM on either Twitter or Instagram, which is Authors Note Pod, or you could shoot us an email at authorsnotepod@gmail.com. So, Panda, what have you been watching?
Well, one of the things I've been watching is going to be the topic of this episode, so I'll save
Mm-hmm.
that. Gonna bench that for later. Gonna put a
Okay.
pin in it. Um, what else have I been
You
watching?
finished Queen's Gambit.
I finished Queen's Gambit. It was incredible.
I'm so
I
glad you
loved
liked
it
it.
very much. It was
Yay.
very good. I almost didn't watch it, but then, like, including you, I kept seeing people be like, "Man, this show's really good." And then once you said it was good, I was like, "Okay, damn, I guess, I guess I will do this." And
Peacemaker.
damn, it really well, you're
Yeah.
harder to please than other people. And I don't say that in a bad way. It's like you're a content filter. I've said this before, but, like, if you're impressed by something, I consider that, like, a point in something's favor.
That is so funny. I every time you tell me this, I just think it's so freaking funny. I love it. Anything else have you been watching, listening to, consuming? Anything?
Oh, I just finished reading Howl's Moving Castle, actually.
Oh, how is it? I've never read it. I've only watched
Oh, I
it.
love it. I love it
Oh,
very much.
I'm so glad.
I like it because it is mostly focused on, like, I mean, the movie focuses on Sophie, but, like, you really get, like, you get to be in Sophie's head, and,
Hmm.
like, she's a lot more sassy in the book. She's, like,
Yeah, I've been told that the
a
book
lot
is
more fun.
so much more enthusiastic in so many different ways in
If I had to
comparison to the
describe the
movie.
difference, I would say that the book is, Sophie's recollection of the events, and the movie is Howl's.
Okay. Okay.
Because the movie, like, Howl is like, oh, he's so suave and, like, a fancy mess.
It's a walking disaster.
Yeah, but he's like a fancy disaster, and that's why, like, so many people really like him.
Mhm.
But in the book, he's like, you see Sophie being a lot more like, oh, this guy's a disaster.
Good. As it
And I
should
love
be.
it. It's really good, and, it does differ from in some ways from the movie, but not I mean, they're just different, and that's fine,
Mhm.
not in any, like, better or worse ways for the most part, so definitely recommend. It's also not very long. I took a while to read it, but only because I would, like, pick it up, then put it back down, but, like, the audiobook is, like, 10 hours, and
Oh,
that's, like,
that's not that bad
nothing.
at all.
Yeah, that's nothing for an audiobook. So, it was really good, and
Nice.
now that means I'm back to, listening to Warrior Cats.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That it? Anything else?
Those are the big things this week, I would
Okay.
say. Yeah.
What can I tell you? I mentioned it on Fresh Podcast, but I started watching Ojamajo Do Re Mi, which is like a children's magical girl series, and it's like
Oh,
my
it's so
bed.
cute.
It's really cute. It's my bedtime show, so I just watch 2 episodes a day, and I'm on episode 7 now. So I've been watching it for the past 3-4 days. I'm really excited, and it's really good. And I I love like enjoying something that's just low stakes but still kind of like a warm hug. I'm enjoying
It's
it
like
so far.
emotional comfort food.
Yeah, and I just love how much magic and music are intertwined in it, and I've always been a really big music fan, obviously, and
Mhm.
I just think it's a really fun concept, and I haven't sat down and watched a magical girl in a really long time, so I'm really enjoying it. And then yesterday, do I even talk about this? Like,
Yes, I demand.
okay, so yesterday I watched Solo or 120 Days of Sodom, which is an Italian movie from the 70s. It's basically Italian.
Controversial choice.
Yeah, it's basically art house torture porn. And I have always wanted to watch it, but I never got around to it because it's not available on Criterion streaming. But during the Criterion sale, it was on sale. So I bought it and I watched it because I was home alone this weekend. And, not something that you would recommend to somebody, but I kind of enjoyed it like in a weird freak ass way. Not in
Yeah.
a horny way, not in a horny way, but just from like a technical standpoint. And there is like a production making of mini documentary on the bonus disc, which is
Ooh.
40 minutes long. So I might just like watch that sometime this week because I was really interested in some of the shot choices. Like, for instance, most of the time, I mean, there's a lot of sex in this movie, obviously, because Sodom's in the title. But whenever somebody's shown having sex, unless they genuinely like have romantic feelings mutually, only one face is shown at a time. And
Hmm.
I I really appreciated that. And like, for instance, there's a scene that's really gross. Guys, don't watch it. Like, don't, like, if you know what it is, that's great, but like I wouldn't suggest you actively like seek it out and watch it. It's not worth it. But I'll probably watch it again because I'm a mess. But like, there's a scene, for instance, that instead of showing the act of what a character is doing, the cinematographer chose to focus on a table that's right in front of the view of this girl. And I was like, that's a really interesting choice to pick that. But also, I see how it is because these people are considered inanimate objects throughout this movie. So, like, I think there's a lot of psychology to unpack on it. And granted, it's such a long ass movie. It's like 2 hours. No movie should be over 90 minutes, in my opinion, at this point.
Hard agree.
Yeah, the more I watch movies, the more I realize that movies should not be more than 90 minutes. You really have to earn it. And some things could have been cut. So I've had some very polarizing media experiences this week, I guess. But without further ado, today's episode, Panda's actually going to take the reins. And Panda, what are we talking about?
Oh, I am so excited for this.
Yeah?
So something very important happened recently,
Yeah,
Teresa.
it sure did.
Some would say it was a landmark event
Two landmark events in one day, I would say,
in
too.
human history. Well, the first landmark event happened slightly before the ones that we're kind of talking about today. We're talking about the canonization of Bubbline, the femme slash ship from Adventure Time, Princess Bubblegum and Marceline the Vampire Queen, and Destiel from Supernatural, which is Dean and Castile. That is those are those people's
Yes.
names,
Yes.
and I'm calling this the Bubbling Destiel Dichotomy
Mm-hmm.
because Destiel became canon Kind of. We'll talk about
Sort
that.
of.
That's
Yeah.
became canon with a an asterisk, let's say.
Mhm.
And Bubbling also had already become canon last year, but was actually like that was just in like a single moment. So this was an episode came out fully focusing on that. But before we can really talk about Destiel and Bubbling, we have to talk about the motion picture production code of 1930.
I'm obsessed with you.
I want to give everyone a timeline real quick of my morning, which is at about 7 o'clock. Teresa messaged me and asked me to come on this episode, and then we brainstormed for a second, and I came up with the idea for this episode. Frankly, because head empty, thoughts only bubbling for the past few days.
It's
So
true.
this is just another excuse to talk about that, and also it's topical, which is good for SEO. Always got that pod brain on.
Oh, you know it.
So at about 7 a.m., Teresa asked me to come on the podcast and we determined the topic of the episode. And about 9 a.m., when I realized I wasn't going to get back to sleep, I got up and went in my living room and banged out basically the first page of these notes all in one fervor. I most of this came from the top of my head with some light fact checking to get like dates right, because I don't have a lot of like formal sources in these notes because most of this is stuff that I'm remembering from my gay and lesbian history class in 2018. But there's plenty of information about what I'm about to talk about out there. There's been plenty of like scholarly and non-scholarly writing about this, and you can also check out a film called The Celluloid Closet, which is about this topic. So let's get into the motion picture production code.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't really know this, or at least I don't hear a lot of people in like, I don't know, current fandom spaces talking about this, but depictions of LGBT people in film actually go back pretty far. Like the first notable examples you can find in like as early as 1895. It wasn't really common necessarily, but there's some pretty noticeable instances of LGBT people being portrayed in films in like the late 19th century through the 1920s and 30s. This includes a Charlie Chaplin film called City Lights, which pretty explicitly depicts Chaplin's character going home with a man after a party, and they sleep in the same bed and they kiss each other on the mouth when they see each other later in the film. Unfortunately, most depictions of LGBT people at this time were limited almost exclusively to gay men and the occasional lesbian, and were only included for comedic effect. You mostly only see this stuff popping up in comedies. The aforementioned Charlie Chaplin portrayal of gay people at this time usually included inversion of gendered stereotypes, so you would have like prissy effeminate men and strong stoic masculine women. At the time, an invert was actually a word used to describe gay people. That was just like a term, like someone could identify as an invert. I won't get off on a tangent about that, but if you Google sexual inversion, you can find some really wild stuff about 19th century sexology. Basically, like people attempting to theorize what being gay is and like how it works like on a psychological level.
Oh my
I can tell you
god.
more about this after we record. I just
Please
don't
do.
want
I would love to hear about it.
I do not want this section to go on too long because we
Mhm.
have a lot to talk about. And everything changed when the Hays Code is hacked. The Hays Code is formally known as the Motion Picture Production Code, informally known as the Hays Code due to its association with William H. Hays, who was president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America from 1922 to 1945. The Hays Code was adopted in the 1930s and enforced through the 1950s. It was still in place in the 1960s, but they just kind of weren't really enforcing it as strictly, and then it was officially replaced in 1968 by the MPAA rating system, which we still use. I have a lot of beef with the MPAA also. There's a movie called This Film Is Not Yet Rated
Uh-huh.
that goes into like the MPAA and like how a lot of their standards are bullshit and the arbitrary nature with which they judge certain things in films to give them certain ratings.
Mhm.
I watched that on Netflix way back in the day, but I don't think it's still on there anymore, but it's really good. But basically the Hays Code was like a set of guidelines for what you could and could not depict in films intended for public audiences.
Mhm.
This came as a result of several Hollywood scandals, as well as the increasing worries about the moral impact of media on the general public. People were starting to worry, a lot of Christian groups were starting to worry that, like, seeing bad things on a big screen and exposing people to that will make them want to do that. And that's still a big debate that honestly is happening, like, even now. But like the Hays Code had like 36, I think, things that you either could or could not depict or needed to be careful about depicting. We're not really going to get into all of it for our purposes. We're mostly just going to talk about the stuff that affected LGBT people and depictions of them. The code didn't specifically ban depictions of homosexuality, but it did forbid depictions of sexual perversion and deviance, which homosexuality fell under at the time. You could kind of skirt around it by doing one or both of two things. You could make the gay character a villain, and or you could punish the gay character for their sin of being gay. This typically meant their death towards the end of the film. This is where we get the idea of bury your gays. It was all as a result of like this policy that was in
And
place.
we always talk about this gay villain trope and how often we see the villain that's gay. So this really stems back this far, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's wow. This is like blowing my mind. Like I always knew in the back of my mind, well, villains are coded as gay because gay people aren't like always considered an antagonist, especially to a quote unquote normal sexual relationship between a man and a woman. But I never realized that this literally just goes back to the Hays Code this whole entire time. This is blowing my mind. Oh my god.
Yeah, the Hays Code set the scene for the code of practices for television broadcasters,
Mhm.
colloquially known as the Television Code, and the Comics Code Authority. Both of these basically policed the type of things that you could depict in obviously television and comics.
Mhm.
An interesting thing about all of this is that it was an attempt to avoid government censorship. They
Mm.
were basically like, why not, instead of putting it on the government to say what people can or cannot say, especially because it violates the First Amendment, why don't we create our own regulatory bodies, and that way we can police ourselves, essentially.
Okay.
The Hays Code was only in effect for like 30 years, but we still see its impact on entertainment media. There are many reasons for this, and this is going to be a little bit reductive, what I'm about to say, but we can kind of boil it down into like two big things that break down into a bunch of smaller things. Production execs are either bigots or cowards.
Mm.
And people who grew up on Hays Code era entertainment would go on to uncritically reproduce attitudes and ideas from the media that influenced them. So, what does this have to do with Adventure Time and Supernatural?
Yay!
Supernatural began airing in 2005, and Adventure Time began airing in 2010. At this time, LGBT characters really only showed up in TV shows aimed at adults. This is especially true of animation, which is seen as being primarily for children. This comes from the idea that the existence of anything outside cis heteronormativity is inappropriate for children. So, Teese, why don't you tell us about Supernatural?
So, Supernatural focuses on the story of two brothers, Sam and Dean, who fight basically everything that goes bump in the night, despite the show usually being considered something where people talk about the characters and the relationship of the characters. It is, in fact, a Monster of the Week TV show. And they drive around in their dad's old Impala and saving people. Fuck, what's the line? Saving people, hunting things. That's what we do. That's like the catchphrase for the Winchesters. And throughout the series, they face God and walk backwards into hell. Who dies? Who gets resurrected? And in season 5, I believe, Oh my god, I should have actually looked this up. That was dummy of me. Castile, he shows up in, okay, you tell me the year, but can you tell me the season and episode, please? Season 4. So Castile shows up in season 4, and he's an angel that basically pulls Dean out of hell and saves him. And the series was supposed to end at the end of season 5, but CW was like, hey, we like how much money this dead horse is spitting out. Let's beat it until it stops spitting out money. And I have not watched Supernatural past season 5, so whoever is still up to date with Supernatural, I'm sorry, you're probably biting your fingernails right now and yelling at me. But lo and behold, a very intense relationship between all of these characters have been made, because no matter how bad writing is for a series, if you're going to save the world together as 3 people, you're obviously going to feel some connection between these characters. And Dean Winchester, which is the older brother, and Castile, the angel, clearly have some banter going on throughout the 4th and 5th season, so on and so forth. And in turn, people obviously ship them because people love to ship. And in this last season, people were really hoping that Destiel would become canon. And in the 3rd to last episode, which is called Despair, it is, I know, it's called Despair, which is so sad.
Anyway.
A character is about to, I actually watched the episode because of this, but a character is about to die, and apparently off screen, Castile makes a deal with God, runs up that hill, and says Jack can come back, which is the character that was dying, if I ever feel a modicum of happiness. You could drag me to essentially super hell, and everybody else can live and continue to survive. I'm pretty sure Jack dies literally in the next episode.
What a weird fucking deal to make.
I know. Literally, like, it just happens suddenly. Like, they're chasing after the girl, the god, whatever you want to call her, that Castile made this deal with off screen, so on and so forth. And they're in like this library bunker thing, and the demons of super hell are knocking on the door, and they're waiting for Sam and Dean are trying to still kill off this Reaper person, and the scythe looks like it came out of a Party City Halloween section, but whatever. And Castile just starts monologuing about how important Dean is, and then says, I love you. And then is like, I love you. And Dean's like, what? And Castile, because he felt a modicum of happiness because he admitted that he cared so deeply about Dean, is that he gets sucked into hell.
Super hell.
He gets sucked into super hell for loving somebody. And then I didn't watch the second to last episode, but then the final episode, Carry On, just ends with Dean dying and going to heaven.
Castiel's not even in it.
No, Castile's, I will say this, I missed the first 4 minutes of the episode. Apparently he's mentioned in those first 4 minutes.
But he's not there.
But he's not there. He was not, his face was not shown, not even in a flashback in that last episode. And so Dean trips and stabs himself on a rusty nail, rusty rod, whatever the fuck it was, dies of tetanus, and then he ends up in heaven. And then there's this really weird montage where Sam grows old. Side note, CW, who is your costume department? I want to have words with you. Like, I guess your makeup department.
Well, this was happening. They were making this during like the beginning of the shutdown, huh? Like,
This probably explains why it was so fucking weirdly shot.
yeah, that's what I've heard.
Okay, so but at the end though, Sam dies of old age, and his now hunter son, who also has the weird supernatural pentagram tattoo, says basically the same thing that Sam said to Dean when Dean died, which is so bad. And then Sam just arrives in heaven, and then it shows the Impala, and then the camera just pans out, and that's the end of the episode. And then it smash cuts to just Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki, who are the 2 actors for Sam and Dean. And they're like, thanks everybody for letting us be on the show for 15 years. By the way, Jared Padalecki is now going to be in a Texas Walker Ranger remake for some reason. And that's it. Like, Misha Collins, the actor of Castile, isn't even shown into like the end of the series thank you. And besides the fact, like, that feels so weird to me that they even had like a that's a wrap thank you at the end of the episode too, because like
Might as well end it in a dance party.
yeah, like I feel like damn, at least at the end of Slumdog Millionaire, they all danced to Jai Ho and it was cute. But like at the end of Supernatural, it's just like everybody standing on the bridge where the last shot was, and then like all the poor boom mic operators are just awkwardly waving. And Misha Collins is nowhere to be found. Could you imagine not getting the invite to your own goodbye rap video and you've been on the show for 11 years?
Wild.
Yeah, so basically there's this brief, it's like a balloon popping, you know, like you finally see Cass say to Dean, "I love you." The balloon pops. Holy shit, it's finally happened. Confetti comes out or whatever. And then the confetti just sinks to the ground and he gets dragged into super hell, and now what? Like the car gets to go to heaven, but Castiel's technically stuck in super hell for the rest of his eternity, you know? And so, how can you even be excited about something that's quote unquote canonized when it's taken away from you within 30 seconds?
And there's kind of some interesting context surrounding the Destiel ship situation from what I understand, cuz
Hmm.
basically when the confession episode came out, I kept seeing 100,000 memes about Jensen Ackles being homophobic.
He is. And Misha Collins is a bootlicker. And I mean, that has nothing to do with the characters themselves,
Yeah.
but Jensen Ackles looks so pained. And apparently, there's rumors that some of the scene in editing was cut. But also, like, if you are trying to get this point across that they do, in fact, love each other, it's just really poor editing on your part. But also, in the script, it says straight up that Dean cannot reciprocate these feelings towards Castile. So it's one sided pining, if anything. It's rejection with one sided pining. It's not even a ship canonized. It's somebody saying, I love you, and then getting rejected in other words.
Yeah, and there's some interesting speculation about why this is.
Hmm.
I mentioned the Jensen Ackles being homophobic thing, and most of that stems from the way that he acted like an asshole to people at conventions and
Hmm.
fans who were making themselves vulnerable before him. He would actively shoot down conversation about Dean possibly being bi, and like, I get that as an actor in a thing, you will probably get annoyed with people talking about shipping so much because you're like, we want to make like this big cool thing, and then all people care about is what two characters will whether or not they'll kiss. And
Hmm.
I can understand being frustrated by that. However, like, this guy was really a jerk.
Yeah, like he wrote no, like when they asked a question about Dean being bisexual. And
Well,
like,
what happened was the person in question had like a paper that they had written
hmm,
about like, is Dean bisexual,
uh-huh.
and she wanted him to sign it at a convention, and he wrote no.
Oh,
He
that's
wrote no
so,
on it.
oh, that's even
And that's just
worse.
rude.
It is.
I get being uncomfortable with certain things or whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't get being uncomfortable with like gay people. But like,
Yeah.
if this is not something that you're comfortable discussing for whatever
Mhm.
reason, like, I get it, whatever. But there's no reason to be rude. There's no
It's just
reason to be
fan
mean.
speculation. It's just a,
Yeah. It's like, let people have fun.
yeah. I mean, I guess what's frustrating is sometimes we think about how, like, if I were to write characters and then someone was like, well, I think you're wrong. This character is that. This is the gospel. But this person was just writing an analysis and a speculation piece.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's frustrating that people constantly ask you the same question over and over again. Like, we all have had experiences with that. However, I think, like, this guy makes so much money. Like his career is literally
Yeah.
set from this series. I would be like, ha ha ha. And plus, like, he's not the writer of the show. He's just an actor who plays the character. And I know that you don't want to be conflated as your character when you're an actor, because once again, that's also really dehumanizing and frustrating, but also like, dude, just sign it. Just say thank you.
There's some speculation that he has had an impact on like how the relationship between Dean and Cassiel has played out, because like
Mm.
supposedly there was supposed to be like in a season 5 episode, Dean was supposed to tell Cassiel like how much he cared about him or something, and he
Mhm.
was maybe even supposed to say, like, he loved him, and then, like,
Wow.
Jensen Ackles made them rewrite it. I don't 100% know if that's
What?
true. I read that on Tumblr, so your mileage may vary, as it should, but, like,
Grain of salt.
I saw this claim, like, several places, so, like, it's
Okay.
clearly something that
Hey
people have
guys,
talked
Panda
about in the
here.
past.
I wanted to put a little addendum at the end of this part of the conversation talking about Jensen Ackles being homophobic. While it is true that he had history over the course of Supernatural's run of being kind of shitty to Destiel shippers, I wanted to acknowledge that there are a lot of LGBT otherwise queer fans in the supernatural community who have had good experiences with Jensen at like fan events and conventions and stuff. And he has always been very kind to people outside of shipping discourse when it comes to queer stuff. And he even has like some gay family members. I still think it's kind of whack that he seems to be okay with gay people existing, just not possibly being perceived as one, or the character that he is playing being perceived as one. But I don't want to diminish the impact that the positive experiences people have had with meeting him in person and talking to him about how Supernatural has helped them in their lives. I don't want to diminish the impact that has had on people, and I don't want to seem like we are leaving them out of the conversation. I also tried to find a source for the bit about changing a scene in a previous episode, but honestly, wading through all those Supernatural posts on Tumblr kind of hurt my brain a little bit, and I ended up not being able to find the actual source that I got that claim from. So if anyone wants to correct me on that, feel free to write into Author's Note. And so that's why people also think that the line about Dean not being able to reciprocate those feelings may have been because of some of Jensen's influence.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I did some light reading when the news broke.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But yeah, so that's Destiel. Everything I know about Supernatural, I've mostly learned against my will, except for the things that I just said because that was out of curiosity.
Mhm.
But I guess maybe it's time to talk about
Time for the meat. Time for your girls.
time for my girls. It's time to talk about Adventure Time. It is the Adventure Time. So should I explain what Adventure Time is? Do I need to accept the idea that people know what this is, or should I like?
I mean, I gave a brief summary of Supernatural.
Yeah, okay, I'll give a brief summary. Adventure Time is about a boy and his dog going on adventures, fighting monsters. It takes place in this weird candy, well, literally candy in some places, but candy colored cartoon world. And it's just sort of a weird little, almost, it starts off as kind of a time capsule of 2010 in many ways.
Mm,
I didn't really watch Adventure Time when it started coming out because I don't know if you remember, but the early 2000s were not kind to Cartoon Network.
no.
A lot of dookie on the air. And so when Adventure Time came out, I kind of thought it was just going to be another one of these things. But
Mhm.
then someone that I met through the My Little Pony fandom, which was like one of my first real fandoms that I interacted with other people, had me sit down and watch like a couple of the more serious episodes to show that it like actually had range in storytelling. And I was like, okay, I'll go back and watch all of this. So Adventure Time began seeding the idea of Marceline and Princess Bubblegum. Marceline, the vampire queen, is
Vampire.
she's kind of an antagonist to begin with, and then she's kind of a Vegeta in that she's an antagonist that becomes a friend.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe her.
Princess Bubblegum, the leader and ruler of the Candy Kingdom, as evidenced by her name. Adventure Time began seeding the idea of them being together as early as season 2, episode 20, Go With Me, in which the two characters clearly had sort of like a. Like Bubblegum didn't really seem to like Marceline for some reason, and Marceline mostly was teasing her the whole time. So, like, there was clearly like they were not on great terms at the time. This would intensify with season 3, episode 10, What Was Missing, which confirmed that the two had a previous history, including a mysterious falling out. Season 5 would have them reconcile and be shown hanging out again. And then at a book signing for the Adventure Time Encyclopedia in 2014, Marceline's voice actress Olivia Olson revealed that during a recording session with Adventure Time showrunner Pendleton Ward, he offhandedly revealed that Marceline and Princess Bubblegum used to date. This was maybe like a year after I got into Adventure Time, and I had seen What Was Missing, so I was firmly on the Bubbline train. This was like the OTP to end all OTPs, like one of the first commissions I ever paid for at a convention was asking someone to draw Bubbline. Like,
Your mind is so big.
I was like, because okay, What Was Missing? I don't know. Have you seen very much Adventure Time,
I
Teresa?
I think What Was Missing is probably one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
I really want to go back and watch Adventure Time from the beginning. I was into it like season 1, season 2, but I
Mhm.
never like sat down and officially watched the whole entire thing.
Yeah. What Was Missing has a song in it that Marceline plays where she says the line, and I'll edit the actual audio in post.
I'm gonna drink the red from your pretty pink face. I'm gonna.
Marceline, that's too distasteful.
Which is
Mhm.
the gayest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it sure is.
It didn't really come as a surprise to a lot of people when Olivia Olson said that they used to date, but it still caused like everybody freaked out. I freaked out. Like the whole Adventure Time fandom was set on fire. After everyone lost their shit, Olivia Olson had to kind of backtrack this and say that people shouldn't take quote things she makes up at panels seriously.
Boo.
And I imagine that she got a talking to from
Yeah,
someone at Cartoon
probably.
Network, because this was still in the time before we were allowed to acknowledge the existence of gays to children. And
Mhm.
despite having a large adult fan base, Adventure Time is still for children.
Mhm.
More details about the falling out of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline would be revealed in Season 7, Episode 2, Varmints. Season 7 also included the Stakes miniseries, which featured an alternate version of the regular Adventure Time opening sequence, but it was focused on Marceline and Bubblegum, and it had an alternate version of the theme song sung by Olivia Olson. The show would continue to drop hints that Marcy and PB were hanging out again more and more. Season 8, episode 1, Broke His Crown, it shows Marcy bringing PB to dinner at Ice King's house. This episode is heavily coded as someone bringing their partner home to meet their parents, even though like Princess Bubblegum and Ice King know each other technically at this point, but they've always been very adversarial. And this is the Ice King is also you find out at some point in the series that he was sort of a father figure for
Yeah, he
Marceline
takes care of Marceline.
when she was really young.
Yeah, I remember he was a really good example of their relationship and their backstory and stuff like that. And every time I watch an episode, I cry. So
Yeah, that's the episode. I didn't write the season and episode number down for that one, but that's the episode I Remember You.
you can easily Google it and it'll come up
I cried
immediately
so
every time.
much.
Yeah. Oh my
I
God.
cried so much.
Yeah, same.
So yeah, like Broke His Crown happens and they're not in a relationship or whatever, but it's very coded that way.
Mhm.
And then 2 episodes in season 10 episode 5 called 17, and season 10 episode 7 Marcy and Hudson showed Marcy and PB wearing items of each other's clothing, which
Ugh.
is very gay relationship coded, specifically lesbian relationship coded. Their relationship would be cemented in the series finale Come Along With Me, wherein Marceline declares her feelings for Princess Bubblegum and they kiss. I
Oh.
found out that this would happen, or I found out that they would become canon. I didn't know they were going to kiss. It was shortly before the episode aired, like they released that detail to the press, and
Mhm.
I found out while I was on a lunch break at my old burger job, and I literally, like, I went into the bathroom and cried. Like, I really did. Like, I, like, did not even know how to
I think
fucking
you texted me about it. I think
I
you were
texted everyone. I texted literally everyone.
everybody needed to know.
I needed everyone to know that I was freaking out. I literally cried in the bathroom and had to, like, go back to work and just be a burger person and not think about my gay cartoons.
I respect that.
It was a lot. So that brings us to November 19th, 2020, which as of this recording was like 4 days ago.
Mhm.
HBO Max premiered the episode Obsidian. Obsidian is the second episode of the HBO Max exclusive miniseries Distant Lands. It takes place nebulously after the series finale, and it's only going to be 4 episodes. And as far as I can tell, only 2 of them are out so far, but they seem like each episode is like 45 minutes and it seems like its own contained thing, so it's not
Mhm.
necessarily like a whole singular arc as far as I can tell. That remains to be seen. I'm not sure how the rest of the episodes are going to go, but the first episode is about BMO, and then this one, Obsidian, is about Marceline and Bubblegum. And it focuses on some of Marceline's past trauma, in addition to her relationship with Princess Bubblegum, both past and present. There are a lot of callbacks to previous #Bubbling moments throughout the original series in this episode. It also featured a lot of casual PDA between the two of them, and Princess Bubblegum explicitly refers to Marceline as her girlfriend. They are shown living together and they like kiss each other on the cheeks, and then at the big moment in the climax they like kiss on the mouth and they say they love each other. It's like unambiguous, like
Wow.
100% like mutual relationship.
Okay.
And then the
Right.
same night the series finale of Supernatural aired.
Oh, Jesus.
And Teese, do you want to scroll down to the bottom of the notes and see what I have put there?
I didn't watch it, so Teese will have to talk about this.
Also, fart noise.
Fart noise. That's the mood.
So we talked about the series finale.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it besides that it was incredibly disappointing and it feels bad. Like, no surprise here, team. I think we all know this, but I'm in fact a gay person. And as great as it is to poke at this hot mess of a 15-year long run show and made by a group of people that will forever have way more money than I ever will have, it's really disheartening to see the car go to heaven when somebody who sacrificed himself has saved the world over and over and over again have one final sacrifice and for it to just end in eternal damnation. Like, I'm not religious or anything, but it's heartbreaking, I guess, as a gay person. And I mean, you could easily argue that this is platonic love because Cass just happens to love the whole Winchester family and all the people that it's a very found family moment. And however, this is specifically Dean and Cass alone in this conversation. And Cass is telling him this because he knows that this is his final moment. And obviously, you can still feel happiness without saying it outwardly. But Cass chooses in his final moments to say to Dean, I love you, as a goodbye. And of course, he says goodbye, Dean, at the end, but it's clear that this I love you means something to him. They've never said it to each other before, and for Castiel to feel this emotion, it's the end. Like, you're donezo. And it's very clearly coded in a way that the fans wanted this, but they weren't going to get it the way that they wanted it. And it's like a slap in the face. It's the end. It's yeah, you'll get gay Castile, but you're not going to get the canon happy ending that you were hoping for. And for Supernatural to end and heaven is this beautiful mountain range where you could just drive and sit on a porch and have a beer with people you love, and your parents live down the street from you, and these other people that you've grown really close to and had these relationships during your hunting days live down the street who have also died. It sucks that they're all there, but Cass isn't. And
Not to mention, like, the grossness of having a character go to hell, to super hell, after admitting that they have gay feelings, when,
yes,
like, this is something that real human gay people have to deal with, the idea that, like,
there's too long of a history for
yeah,
you to even consider using this as a punchline.
like,
Like,
this
how is
isn't even, like, this is worse than barrier gay.
yeah, like this is how did nobody in the writers' room go, this isn't a good idea.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
I just it's so dare I say, out of touch. This final episode it aired on a Thursday, on Out of Touch Thursday,
the most
and
out of touch Thursday in history.
oh my god, it was so I just thought it was so unnecessary and evil. And I mean, I haven't watched Supernatural since season fucking 5. The fact that I even watched it, and like it just was a slap in the face.
I mean, like, the idea that people supported this ship was
Mhm,
not, like, they knew.
mhm,
Like, and I aggressively avoided supernatural content
mhm.
when I was on Tumblr, and I knew about Destiel. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't a secret.
Not to say that the gays own mountain ranges. However, Heaven was giving me some huge Brokeback Mountain range vibes. Just saying. And I was like, oh, yes, please tell me he's going to. Because at the end of it, Dean's like, I'm going to go take a drive. And as he drives, there's the second montage with where Sam gets old. And I was like, oh my God, at the end of this montage, Dean is going to drive up to a house on the mountain range, and there's going to be Castile, and they're going to kiss, and it's going to be good. And then I was like, this is not going to, like, also, but then at the same time, I was like, this is not going to happen. This man is dead. Like, and it feels bad because not Cass. It feels bad because Sam is shown continuing moving forward his life and having a partner and having a child. Granted, also, in that montage, the person that he marries and has a child with is literally never shown except for like one weird portrait hanging over his deathbed. But like there's this little child who of course stitched into his overalls when he's a toddler learning to walk says Dean across it, so you get that Sam named his child after his dead brother. Go off, I guess, but whatever. And like you see Sam continue to grow old, to be happy, to find somebody that he loves and loves enough to have a relationship, especially after the opening of the whole entire show is that his fiance is horribly and forcibly ripped from his hands due to a demon. And that's literally kicks off the whole entire show, and just show Sam recover and to live this life and to be happy. And yet in Heavens, Dean doesn't have and I mean, let's be real, you never have to be like, you don't have to marry somebody to be happy, obviously,
Yeah.
but for a ship to continue to build and to grow throughout a whole entire series and then not show him be happy with the person that literally said I love you 2 episodes ago, it's just it's just exhausting. It's just so disheartening is what it really at the end of the day, that's just what it is. It's just fucking disheartening.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just so interesting that these two things that Obsidian and which lyric from the song did they name the episode will carry on.
Just carry on.
It's just carry on. I like that Obsidian and Carry On came out on like the same day and are at such opposite ends of how one successfully does and does not canonize queer subtext.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, Bubbling isn't even the first good lesbian ship that got canonized. Before everyone yells at me, it's not confirmed whether or not either Princess Bubblegum or Marceline are lesbians. They've been shown to date men in the past, so they could both be bi. I'd say lesbian because I'm a lesbian and I'm projecting. So, just take that as my opinion and not an official declaration on the orientations of these cartoon women. But Bubbling was not like the even one of the most like landmark
lesbian ships to get canonized this year, but like I would kind of argue that it's one of the best in execution for sure. And it's just like,
I think it's obvious that the writers in Adventure Time took thought into consideration
it's about
into
care.
yeah, it's about fostering and nurturing the relationship while the CW writers were just like I should say the Supernatural writers. I mean, CW is a mess as a whole, but
Yeah.
clearly Supernatural wrote this for the show.
And it's not as though Supernatural did not have any other gay
No,
characters.
oh my god, that's another thing. In the episode Despair, a woman dies and she is a woman in a relationship with a woman. She's a woman of color. So that feels like an even bigger slap in the face that would another lesbian relationship. I guess we should really be saying a wolawa, a
Yeah.
women loving women relationship proves that like they just don't give a shit. Like they really, and obviously like a gay character can still die. That's a gay character. I mean, it kind of was like an indiscriminate thing where a bunch of people that worked with the Winchesters just die suddenly due to
It would
this
not
pact.
be notable if not
Mhm.
for the wider
But
context.
she specifically was eating breakfast with her girlfriend. Her girlfriend was saying how much she loves the way that her girlfriend cooks eggs. Where have you been my whole entire life? And it's just the Supernatural writers just through this. Like, I don't know. I haven't obviously been keeping up. I've only watched these 2 episodes besides the first 5 seasons 10 years ago or whatever. So I really can't say how that relationship has fostered. And if somebody has stayed up to date with Supernatural and does want to talk about it, I would love to hear this. But it's so obvious that while the Adventure Time writers really took thought into consideration into how a relationship naturally develops, the Supernatural writers were like, yeah, I guess we'll give this to you, but you're not keeping it. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, and it's just, it can be so frustrating because, like, I mean, I'll even say that I think that Adventure Time, for a long time, the justification for, like, not having any queer characters was, like, you hear this a lot in animation, not even just animation, like entertainment in general, being like, we can't put the gays in because this airs in China and homosexuality is illegal in China. And like, yeah, but also like, for in a lot of ways this is just kind of an excuse, like it's scapegoating. Like you're also afraid of like the homophobes in America, and it's only just in the past like 5 years become okay to show gay people to children.
Mm-hmm.
But I never got the impression that Adventure Time was not doing this because like they just didn't want to. It definitely seems like they were skirting under the radar and like trying to get this stuff in where they could, because like the situation with depicting gay characters on Cartoon Network didn't really change until Steven Universe became a big hit,
Mm-hmm.
and Rebecca Sugar literally threatened to take the show somewhere else if they were not going to let her put romance between two female coded characters in the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, like, that really, pretty much every gay cartoon on Cartoon Network from here on out has Rebecca Sugar to thank for this.
I love that. That's so
And
good.
also, a fun little tidbit in the Stakes miniseries, we see Marceline's mom in a flashback, and she's played by Rebecca Sugar.
Oh.
There was another flashback in Obsidian, and she's not played by Rebecca Sugar, probably because of, I imagine, quarantine affecting, I don't know, recording and shit, or maybe she's busy. I don't know what her life is like, but she's played instead by a Steven Universe actress who did the voice of Sapphire. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. I'm not gonna Google it, but yeah, so I lost the bit there for a second. Sorry, folks. But yeah, like it just shows that like if you want it to happen, you can eventually get there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and people, this is going to be a little discoursey, but like people complain about like why are there so many canon lesbians and no like gay men in cartoons or whatever. And like it's not because lesbians are more accepted or more palatable. It's because like the people getting this stuff through the door are queer women who are like writing their own stories. A lot of Marceline's character was written by Rebecca Sugar during her time on Adventure Time, and like the storyboard artist that pushed for the Bubbline kiss at the end of the series finale was also a woman, and I think a queer woman. Like She-Ra is because Noelle Stevenson is a queer non-binary person. These are people like working hard to show themselves being represented in their art, and it just shows that like the Supernatural team, do they even have any gay people on staff? Like
I don't think so.
probably not.
Oh, and with that, I think it's time to wrap this up. Panda, thank you so much for being a guest on the episode today.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me talk about my babies.
Yes. Where can the internet find you?
They can find me on a podcast with you called The Fresh Podcast Market, or they could also find me on twitter.com, the bad website, at mpandanata. You can check out my other podcast, Imagine Me and Utana, or I'm working on some other podcasts, editing wise. I edit Puella Magi Modica Magicast and the upcoming Gundam podcast, Big Steppy. And I'm also on the comics podcast. I do a lot of pods.
Yeah.
It's all I do.
Panda
People
is
keep telling me I need to stop. I need to put down some of the pods, and I say no, and I pick more up.
Panda is a walking podcast. If you'd like to find Cass, even though he wasn't on the episode today, you could find him at Val Hethella, which is VALHETHELLA. You could find me, good old Teese, on the Fresh Podcast Market with Panda, or you could find me on Twitter at Vicunyad, VICUNAD. Our theme music was done by James Yaiullo, and you could find him on Bandcamp under James Y. And our cover art, that's the word I was looking for. Our cover art is done by our good pal Jala. If you're interested in anything that Jala has to say, she is on our Gotcha Game episode, and you could follow her at Nyaliest on Twitter, which is NYALLIEST. Usual stuff. You could also shoot us any thoughts and comments on Twitter, which is AuthorsNotePod, or you can send us an email at authorsnotepod@gmail.com. We have a Ko-fi where you could give us some sweet donations, which is just ko-fi.com/authorsnotepod. And for a total of 15 whole whopping dollars, you can actually pay for our monthly publishing and processing fees to be up and about, which is really awesome. Shout out to the person who did actually tip us a Ko-fi last week. I really appreciate it. Hell yeah. I think that's about it. I don't have anything else fancy to say. Any last final remarks, Pand?
No, I think I've said literally everything.
Awesome. Well, everybody, have a good night. Thank you so much, and enjoy the holidays. Stay safe and wear a mask. Have a good one. Bye.